Welcome back. You're watching To The Point. How clear is the evidence that the killings in Andhra and Telangana were false encounter murders committed by the police? And how should this growing trend of false encounters be tackled and reversed? Indeed, how easy is it to change the way the police think? My guests are the well-known Supreme Court lawyer and human rights activist Vrinda Grover, former Director General of Police in Andhra, Noel Swaranjit Sen, the Andhra Pradesh President of the People's Union of Civil Liberties, Jaya Vindhyale, and the founder of Aman Baradari, Harsh Mandar. Vrinda Grover, 20 people killed by the Andhra police in mysterious and strongly disputed circumstances, 5 more by the Telangana police in equally disturbing circumstances, and then on top of this in July, Minister of State for Home Kiran Rijiju reveals in Parliament that in 2013-2014, there were 49 alleged fake encounters officially registered. God knows how many more there were which were never registered. Do you get the feeling that fake encounters, which are tantamount to murder by the police, is a very worrying problem in India? Vrinda Grover, did you hear that? No, we don't seem to have Vrinda Grover. The Harsh Mandar, if you heard that question, would you answer it for me, please? Harsh Mandar? We don't have Harsh Mandar either. Jaya Vindhyale, are you there?
Yes. Yes.
Would you answer that question for me, please?
Yes.
Let me repeat the question. 20 people killed in Andhra by the police in mysterious and strongly disputed circumstances. 5 more by the Telangana police in equally disturbing conditions. And on top of this, in July, the Minister of State for Home, Kiran Rijiju, reveals in Parliament that in 2013-14, there were 49 alleged fake encounters officially registered. God knows how many more there were which were never registered. Do you get the feeling that fake encounters, which are tantamount to murder by the police, is a very worrying problem in India that perhaps doesn't get the attention it deserves?
Yes. As per NHRC reports, from the 2002 onwards, 2013 तक 990 फेक एनकाउंटर्स करे बोल के एक रिपोर्ट है NHRC का. Hello.
Yes, carry on.
There is a report, NHRC, National Human Rights Commission report, एक रिपोर्ट रिलीज करे 2002 से 2013 तक 990 killings by the state. Most of the encounters, fake encounters, the NHRC declared.
Okay. I want to
now.
Let me bring in Noel Swaranjit Sen at that point. Mr. Sen, this is a shameful situation. Policemen are meant to be custodians of law and order. We look upon them to save our lives. Yet it turns out that when they have problems, they end up taking the lives of people who are innocent. How do you justify, defend and explain what happened in Andhra and Telangana?
Well, I don't know how anyone can say the persons who were killed were innocent. I mean, this is the most atrocious and ridiculous statement that anyone can make. The people who were killed, the 5 persons in Warangal, were hardened criminals who had killed police officers, who had robbed banks, and done all sorts of things.
Mr. Sen,
and those who were killed in AP.
Can I interrupt you?
Yeah.
You call them hardened criminals, you say they had killed police officers, but they hadn't as yet been found guilty. As a policeman, you know, you only are a criminal when found guilty by a court. Secondly, and this is equally important, you're talking about those 5 people who were killed in a rather dubious way. They were 5 under trials. They were allegedly, the police says, attempting to snatch police weapons and escape. But we've seen pictures of them in handcuffs, killed and slumped inside police jeeps. How do you account for that?
Well, I account for it this way. that in case the police really wanted to fake up the whole thing, they wouldn't have left all this evidence. After all, they did have a break, and at that break, people must have got out. And if the police really wanted to fake up an encounter, they could have done it outside the bus and not leave it as incriminating as it evidently shows. So what has obviously happened is
I accept the logic of the point you're making.
Something has happened. I think that these 5 people have in desperation jumped the gun or jumped the police, and in the heat of the situation, bullets have been fired and people have died.
You know, I accept the logic. Can I interrupt? I accept the logic of the way you began your answer, that the police wouldn't leave behind such incriminating evidence because it certainly proves that the police story then looks false. On the other hand, there were 17 armed policemen, 5 handcuffed under trials. And are you telling me that 17 armed Telangana policemen cannot control and subdue 5 men in handcuffs? Secondly, the photographs show these men in handcuffs, still handcuffed, dead in a police jeep. Now, admittedly, in 1 or 2 cases, a gun has been put into their hands, but the gun is put into handcuffed hands. It doesn't add up.
No, I don't think you should say a gun has been put into the hand. If you're going to accept that it was natural to have the handcuff there, you're believing to that extent, then you might as well believe that the gun was there because somebody grabbed it. Now, in the heat of the situation, bullets were fired. This is all I can say.
Can a man in handcuffs grab a gun? Can a man in handcuffs grab a gun? And remember, there were 17 armed policemen, just 5 handcuffed under trials. Are you saying that 17 armed policemen can't subdue 5 handcuffed under trials?
You see, they were in a bus, right? And in the bus, a large number of policemen must have been at the back, and these guys must have been in front. Now, what happened after the break, we do not know. While prima facie, it looks a very, very bad case, but I would not like to subscribe to the idea that these people have been killed in cold blood.
All right.
It can be hot blood. Hot blood in the sense that they have been provoked, they have been jumped at, and then guns have been fired, things like that.
Vrinda Grover is able to join us. The line to Vrinda Grover has gone through. Ms. Grover, we're talking at this moment about the killing of the 5 under trials in Telangana. Noel Swaranjit Sen, the former DGP Andhra, has said that in fact he doesn't believe this was a false encounter, and he has prima facie a good reason for saying so. He says the police wouldn't leave behind such incriminating evidence of people with handcuffs slumped to death inside police jeeps, because if you are going to stage an encounter, you stage it more intelligently. You don't leave it looking so blatantly as if in fact you're lying. How do you respond to that argument?
Firstly, it's not about what the DGP believes or not. This matter will have to be decided through an independent investigation, and that's what the law says. Whether the police leaves behind incriminating evidence, encounter cases that I have done, which are basically extrajudicial killings, like the Ishrat Jahan matter, what has come before us? That the entire trail of evidence shows that this was clearly a brazen, cold-blooded killing. This is not the first time this is happening in the country. And the reason why this continues to happen, Karan, is because the police leadership, without knowing the facts, without going through an independent investigation, starts justifying it, and that's the signal that goes down the line. The politicians, depending on whether it suits them or not, they start legitimizing encounters, and they build a fear psychosis in the country that, oh, this is the only way to control crime and the only way to keep you safe. There are innumerable instances, and that is how extrajudicial killings are exposed. Recently, the Supreme Court has shown that through a commission set up by the Supreme Court, that the killings in Manipur were of innocent people with no linkage whatsoever to militancy.
I have got Harsh Mandir with me. Let's use this, Harsh Mandir, as an opportunity to move from what happened in Telangana to that what happened in Andhra. Now, many people say that the most damning evidence that the Andhra killings were false fake encounters and therefore cold-blooded murder is the evidence of Shekhar, the villager from Vettagiri Palayam, who allegedly escaped the killings, but says that he saw 7 of those who were killed being taken off a bus by the police near the Andhra-Tamil border just 2 hours before they met their end. If Shekhar is right, would you agree this is not a case of smugglers? This looks like a case of ordinary people being killed and murdered. And then I'll go back to the DGP for his response.
Yeah, please let me know why I should accept.
Can I get Harsh Mandar to answer that? Can I get Harsh to answer it, and then I'll come to you, Mr. Sen.
Statement?
I'll come to you in a moment's time. Harsh, do you want to answer that?
Yeah. Karan, there's an old tradition of undivided Andhra Pradesh of extrajudicial killings, largely focused on Naxalites. But there has been a condoning over many years by the political establishment, by the executive, by the executive magistrates, by many segments of the media of this kind of cold-blooded killing by the police. But these 2 incidents, both the Telangana one and the Andhra one, have been done with so much, in such a clumsy way. I think that it reflects, unlike what the DGP said, I think it reflects a confidence of impunity that, whatever we do, it'll pass muster. Because not just Shekhar's statement, but they say that all the killings are largely in the head and in the chest. And if what the police's case is that this set of woodcutters were throwing stones and then they opened random fire. Random fire, I've handled many law and order situations personally, would not result in such targeted bullets right in the head and the chest.
Let me bring in Mr. Sen. Mr. Sen, it's not just Shekhar's evidence, which I heard you a moment ago saying that you don't want to necessarily accept, that casts doubt over the police account about what happened in Andhra. There's also the fact that the police claim they were attacked with sickles and stones, that they fired randomly in self-defense, and yet 20 people got killed, no one allegedly injured, and the police themselves suffered very minor injuries, if at all. Beyond that, the Times of India says reporters who've been to the scene say that if there was random firing, how come there's no bullet marks on the trees? There are none. How come several of the bodies were dragged? How come several of the dead were shot straight at the back of the head or straight in the face? And then finally, the police say there were 100 people carrying logs. Only 20 logs are found, which is the precise number of people killed. And many of the logs have go-down markings. Now, all of that to a layman suggests something deeply suspicious. Please answer.
Well, yes, I would agree that it looks very bad the way it is. But in the heat of the moment, anything can happen. Suppose a crowd of 300, a mob about 20 people, and it is frightening the way they do it. They are armed with not only sickles and stones, axes, everything. And not so long ago, they did catch 2 police officers and hacked them to death. So, at the heat of the situation, anything can happen. Bullets have been fired. And, unfortunately, police is armed with SLR rifles and 303 weapons. Now, these are very powerful weapons. There is no other weapon which is available to...
So are you suggesting that in fact the weapon should be removed from the police? That in fact that these weapons in the hands of the police are dangerous?
I am glad that you are asking me this question. I am really glad, because what I want to say is this country has never once addressed the problems of the police where law and order is concerned, especially where use of firearms is involved.
But are you saying that in fact they shouldn't have such firearms? Because it sounds to me as if you're saying these are dangerous firearms, don't give them to police, the police will end up using them.
No, the police should have some other kind of firearms.
Well, I'm glad to hear you be so honest.
Ones which the government is not interested in providing because it will be at a hell of a cost.
Okay.
These are all discarded weapons from the army.
Can I bring in Brinda Grover? Brinda Grover, Mr. Sen began by saying that the details of what
Nobody
happened in
wants to kill
Andhra
them.
are deeply worrying, suspicious and disturbing. And to be honest, he said the same thing about the details of Telangana too. He's been very honest. He then went on to say that the firearms the police have are dangerous firearms. He thinks they should have different types of firearms. But he added that in the heat of the moment, things can go wrong and there can be deaths. Is that an acceptable explanation for the killing of 20? Or does it, as far as you're concerned, not cut much ice?
I think then you should...
As I hear it, he's telling us that the police force is ill-trained and indisciplined and does not know how to actually deal with arms which are lethal. What does the law say? The law says that you can only cause death in self-defense if the assault is such that there is a reasonable apprehension that you can be killed, and that there must be a principle of proportionality in what is the firing that the police will do, and it must be necessary, and you must not have had time to take other recourse. The entire evidence that is coming before us in terms of media reports suggests that A, they had prior information, B, there does not seem to be an assault on the police which can cause a reasonable apprehension of death. If the police force in this country is not well trained, does not know how to deal with firearms, then the life of every single citizen in this country is today at risk.
Okay.
We need an SIT monitored by the court to look into this. The police officers have to be of a very high rank and inspire the confidence of the people. This is impunity of the highest order, and it does not matter whether they are branded by the police as terrorists or as smugglers or as woodcutters. This is not legal and lawful what has happened. It is nothing but cold-blooded murder. An FIR should be registered against the police, as the Supreme Court has laid down in its 2014 judgment of PUCL versus State of Maharashtra.
I want to take up, in fact, that 2014 judgment, Harsh Mandir. It's a judgment where the Supreme Court attempted to lay down guidelines that would prevent fake encounters. The police, according to those guidelines, were required to write and record in writing every intelligence input about armed terrorist movement, to file immediate FIRs, and the investigation should happen by an officer of SP rank from another police district. But clearly those guidelines are not sufficient. They're clearly, even 6 months later, unable to prevent horrible fake encounters, which is what we all believe happened in Andhra and Telangana. And to be honest, Mr. Sen seems to accept it, even though he won't say so. So do we need the Supreme Court to step in? Do we need someone else to step in? What's your answer?
You know, this is not the first time that the Supreme Court has issued guidelines, nor the NHRC. I think the real problem is not how lethal are the weapons that the police holds. I think it is the impunity that has surrounded encounter killings over the decades. I mean, that the fact that every single existing law requires every single one of these encounters have to be investigated by a magistrate. The trouble is that almost every magistrate in the country seems to just not follow conscience or law, and actually absolve the police of this crime, and therefore it happens again and again. And in both these cases it really seems to be revenge killings, because in one case in Telangana also, and here again, when the police was attacked, this seems to be like a revenge killing. It brings to mind things like Hashimpura. I mean, if the police can keep getting away with killing people in cold blood, rather than following the process of law.
I take your point.
And just say one more thing, that there's an odd magistrate like Tamang in the Ishrat Jahan case, who did his duty and actually said no, it is a false encounter. So the impunity has to really break down by people following their conscience. I don't see any other approach.
Let me bring in Mr. Sen. Mr. Sen, there seems to be a consensus that there is no possibility of the Supreme Court laying down further guidelines that will be effective, for one simple reason, that you need to tackle the mindset and attitude of policemen if these sort of horrific killings are to stop. How do you tackle the mindset of policemen? You've worked with them all your professional life. How do you tell them that This is not the way to solve difficult, awkward problems.
Well, I would just say that this is a bad incident. I have never justified it. And it cannot be, I would not like to believe that cold-blooded action has been taken by the police, that they are such dumbos that everything will not come on paper. A proper investigation will be done, magisterial inquiry will be held, and if the panelist feels that the magistrates are also in it, I can't say anything more about it.
So are you saying to me, Mr. Sen, are you saying to me that in fact there is no need to change the attitude, thinking and mindset of policemen? Because that's what it sounds as if you're saying.
Well, Mr. Karan, that's a very difficult and different subject. I feel the
Isn't it connected and is it not at the core of the problem we're talking about?
No. Yes, I would say to an extent. I feel that police officers in this country are not selected for the job. People who do not make the marks for IFS, they condescend to join the IPS.
In other words, the wrong sort of people are becoming police officers.
Do they have the attitude? Do they have all the qualities?
Sir, you're a very honest man, Mr. Sen. I applaud your honesty. You began by pointing out that lethal weapons in the hands of policemen sometimes should be removed, that those are lethal weapons that they don't know how to use and they use it dangerously. And now you're pointing out even more honestly that the wrong sort of people become policemen in our country. It's not just a mindset problem, it's a character problem as well. I applaud your honesty. I hope your fellow colleagues agree with you, but I haven't had a former DGP who's so honest on the show for a long time. My thanks to you for your honesty. My apologies to Jai Vindhyale that we lost the line and we have an audio problem, which is why we weren't able to involve her further in discussion. And my thanks to everyone else. If you have been, thanks for watching. Goodbye. Good night.